But do Canadian forces have to accompany Iraqi forces to the front lines in order to train and advise them? Was this the mission the government led Canadians to expect, or has it, quote, evolved into a combat mission? Let's get the MP's take on this. James Bezan is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Defence Minister. NDP Defence critic Jack Harris is beside him, and the Liberal Defence critic Joyce Murray is here. Welcome back, all of you.
Hi,
all right, James Bezan, it seems to me, I'm going to play you this clip. The Prime Minister on September 30th and your Defence Minister today about accompanying troops on the front lines. And I can tell you there's a lot of light between these two. Check this out.
It's quite precise. It's to advise, to assist. It is not to accompany, and I think that was laid out before the Parliamentary Committee.
It was to advise and assist and not to accompany. Then today you've got Minister Nicholson saying, how can you advise and assist without accompanying? Was the Prime Minister misleading the House on the nature of the mission?
Not at all. We haven't changed one iota from when we first went back in September with our Special Operations Forces into Iraq to help the Kurdish Peshmerga and Iraqi security forces. We're still in an advise-assist role. Sometimes that means that you have to be at or near the front lines to visualize and scope out what the objectives are. If you're going to be involved, as I said on the show many times, command and control. It's not just a training mission. It's about improving the efficacy of the Iraqi security forces, and we're starting to see the fruits of those labors. 3 months in, and they're starting to take back territory. They're starting to have control over major routes that where supply lines for ISIL exist, and we're starting to see some real positive change happening.
The debate isn't about the effectiveness. The debate is what you told parliamentarians and Canadians and what's actually happening. Now, you've admitted that there's an evolution. The military has admitted there's an evolution. The question is that a euphemism for a change? And again, why would the Prime Minister on September 30th explicitly say we are not accompanying? Now that's a critical part of the mission, according to the Defence Minister. I got to tell you, for a Canadian watching that, it is virtually impossible to square that circle. Why can't the government simply say the mission has changed?
Well, we said right from the get-go that this was a mission that had low risk, but not no risk. And so we are expected that there's going to be situations when our commanders, when our Special Operation Forces are in situations that could be dangerous, and they are allowed to defend themselves. And that's what they've done. They've been able to eliminate those risk factors that have been firing upon them. They have fired back. But this isn't a ground war that we're in there in a combat role. We're strictly there as operators, providing that command and control structure, advising the forces on how they go forward, especially now that we have them all trained up, as well as still working in the overall, military planning that we said that we do right from the get-go. So we're doing that, and we're having success.
From the get-go. I mean, this is the critical. No, but this is not about whether the troops are effective or whether they have the right to self-defense, which everyone knows they do. The question is, how did they get put in a position where they are accompanying troops at the front line and painting targets? And, when you look back at the Prime Minister who explicitly said there was no accompanying as part of it, and now there is, I guess the question is, how do we trust the government to tell Canadians what is happening when our men and women are on the ground if one day we say X and the next day we say Y?
Well, I think the Canadians are trusting us because we have full disclosure here. Every time this happens, we come and we tell everybody about it. We are having a full and open debate in Parliament. Unlike what happened under the Liberals, we are providing ongoing updates and technical briefings, and we've already done 4 or 5 since the new year. And we're looking at even having ministers before committee again before the end of this week. So, there is that opportunity there. We're providing all the information. And yes, situations can change, but at the same time, we have a mandate and a role to play there. And I can tell you that members of the Canadian Armed Forces, whether in the Special Operations Forces or they're part of Air Task Force, are respecting the mandate that was given to them by Parliament through the resolution that was passed.
So how often are they exchanging gunfire with ISIS?
Well, what they're saying right now is that happened 3 times. Full disclosure. We know that they've come under attack in all 3 situations, based upon the technical briefing we saw today, is that they are, again, out there doing their observation, trying to help plan with Iraqi security forces.
Well, they're not just observing, they're tagging targets for jets. I mean, you and I have got to admit, that's not observing.
That's part of the air task force, and that in itself, they're not directly themselves going out there and engaging in the enemy. They're just directing our very expensive precision munitions and making sure they hit and eliminate risk. Look, it all comes down to, again, we are there to make sure that we have a successful campaign, that ISIL as a terrorist organization has said that they're going to attack Canada. We want to make sure that doesn't happen, and I know that we're very proud of the Canadian Armed Forces. The Liberals and the NDP may not want to be there, but I can tell you that most Canadians want to see us in the theater.
No, this isn't about support. It's about the debate. Let me bring in Joyce Murray. The debate is very specifically about what was described and what is happening. Now, the government has said we are open, that this is part of what active training is. The military has defended it, saying this falls within the purview of the mandate. I know you think this is mission creep, but the military is saying this is the best way to train. What's your response to them?
Well, my response is that the bottom line is that this government is not being forthright. They've not been telling the truth, and now I feel a bit sorry for James because he's having to scramble to justify the contradictory statements between his minister, the minister saying that that the forces have to accompany, and the Prime Minister having said explicitly that that's not necessary. General Lawson made it clear that this would not be close combat advising. Major General Hood in committee said absolutely no close combat advising, but that is what we have. So they're being put in the front lines. They're at risk, and they are, as you pointed out, Canadians support our troops defending themselves, but it is the government that is putting them in that situation and not being honest, not being forthright with Canadians.
So, there was Jack Harris, we just spoke to your leader, Tom Mulcair. The Speaker denied an emergency debate on the mission today. What now? Will your party just wait until the 6-month extension to debate at the end of March?
Well, first of all, what the Speaker didn't deny that there was an emergency. What he said was that we were now in a new session of Parliament, that there were opportunities to debate that during supply days and other events. He did not say this was not an emergency. He did not make any comment whatsoever on the validity of the statements that were made by me in the request. And, you know, what we're talking about evolution, this is really what we call mission creep, what we warned about from the very beginning. And the things that they're doing, in addition to being at the front lines, which was denied to the Wall Street Journal as late as December, and calling in airstrikes. General Lawson himself said on national television that that would not be appropriate. He obviously didn't think that it was within the mandate that was given to him. So when Mr. Nicholson says, and Mr. Bezan, his parliamentary secretary, says this was always the intent from the beginning, that was not at all the intent, because he was asked specifically about that. The Prime Minister was asked specifically about that. The CDS denied that this was part of the mission. So something has happened in the meantime. We don't trust this government going forward.
Mr. Bezan, last question to you. Minister Nicholson said today you can't advise and assist without accompanying, even though the Prime Minister on September 30th said you can. Contrast that to the Americans who are there. American troops are not being deployed with Iraqi troops to the front lines. They are, quote, training Iraqis, I'm using their phrase, behind the wire in 4 major military bases. So I don't get this. Americans say they can train behind the wire. Why do Canadians need to be at the front lines, clearly vulnerable to fire, clearly then exchanging arms in a firefight with ISIS? What are they doing that we're not doing?
I can't speak to operations of other countries and how they're carrying out their training missions, but I can tell you that with ours, 20% of the time, as General Rouleau said last week, is making sure they go out there and see the ground for themselves, that they're in close proximity or near the front. And as we've said right from the get-go, this is a fluid situation. Things do change. It's low risk, but no risk. We know that there's no risk involved here, so we expect our armed forces to go out there to do their job and to defend themselves when fired upon and eliminate those risks that really are endangering themselves, endangering the Iraqi security forces, and ultimately at the end of the day could be a threat here to Canadians.
They've lost the trust of Canadians, and that's
I wouldn't say
simple.
that one bit.
All right, James Bezan, Jack Harris, and Joyce Murray, welcome back. I'm sure we'll have lots more time to debate this, obviously, as the House resumes the sitting. Thanks so much to all three of you. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thanks, Evan.